Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. Today we are finally tackling the clutch on the 41 Chevy. So as you can see, the master cylinder for the clutch just about fits with a decent amount of room, so no issues with interference there. I confirmed that by obviously first removing the brake booster and master cylinder. Then I held this bit of firewall that I cut out of the donor truck, lined up the holes up there, and then basically took a paper template, this guy, being about the right shape as this, held it up to the firewall and noticed that yes, I did have clearance. I did also move it up about a quarter to a half inch. And that was just to get the bolt holes above this body line right here, or this seam rather. So clutch geometry should still be about right, and hopefully that push rod doesn't foul. But basically, yeah, traced that onto there, cut out the holes with a combination of drills and a plasma cutter. I did have to re-angle this piece of pipe. It was angled such that it was hitting the steering column, but I just cracked the fitting loose, wiggled it, and tightened it down. So no problems there. As far as fitment goes, I did trace this because just like I did up here, I do need a nice flat spot, and there is one of these beads kind of running into there. So I am going to cut that bit out and then weld in a flat piece and smooth it out so that I have a nice flat mounting point for this. And then I'm going to, obviously now that this is mounted, I can actually brace the firewall properly and start thinking about my flow. Right, so on the inside, I do have the slave cylinder right here. What I'm going to do is mount that right around here. I'm going to have to, for now, rebend this bit so that it clears the engine, and probably permanently I'm going to just fab up some hard line to go from the master cylinder to the slave cylinder, but I'm going to use the stock bit for now. To mount it, I did decide that I'm going to make a bracket off of the two bell housing bolts. So basically what I did was just measure the distance between there, and actually use the old bell housing as a reference. Was able to just drop a center punch through, and I made this bracket. So this right here was a piece of angle iron, I guess either, I don't even know, 2 to 2.5 inch angle iron, however big that was. Drilled some holes and then just basically cut it so it'd be some ears, and yeah, that's basically it. I'm going to trim this down eventually once I'm done to get rid of the excess, but for now I left it full length and then just cleaned it up with a flap disc. For the slave cylinder side, I made this guy. Basically just drilled a hole in some flat plate that I had. This is just some 1/8 inch stuff. Drilled a hole in the middle with a hole saw, and then some other bits with a obviously some normal drill bits, and then just kind of cut and radius that end just so it looks a little pretty, and that will mount right there. So basically I gotta bolt this bracket to the bell housing and see if I have to do any trimming. I haven't tried yet. And then this guy will weld off to the side right around there. That'll mount the slave cylinder, and then there's going to be a push rod that goes from the slave cylinder to this ball socket on the clutch fork. And unfortunately, since I didn't have, or since I lost the push rod that came with it, and had a kind of a pain in the butt trying to find a new one, I just took a bolt from the pile of stuff that came out of the donor truck, rounded off the head, chucked this in a drill, and just held it against the bench grinder until I could get a nice smooth radius, kind of doing that motion. I might actually, I'm going to probably take care of that on this end too. But what that's going to do is seat nicely in that socket and then be pushed on by the slave cylinder. So that's my plan. So yeah, just gotta get to it. First step is going to be to bolt the bracket onto there. Then I'm going to basically bolt this guy, or just kind of hold this guy onto the slave cylinder. Hold it roughly where I want it, make some marks, and then we will weld it on. Alright, there it is, all tacked up. You can sort of get the idea how that's going to mount like so. So all I got to do now is pull the bolts off, pull the bracket off, finish weld it on the bench, and I think I'm going to also add some gussets to the top side. That way it stays a little bit more rigid than just a single weld bead down the middle. So yeah, I'm gonna get to it. Alright, there we go. Weld it up. Got some gussets going on. My welds do look really shitty. I just changed out the spool of wire on my machine, and it wasn't feeding right, so a lot of that was not enough wire speed, and then overcompensated, and it would give too much wire speed. But I got that all figured out, so like the last half inch of weld on this thing was actually pretty good. But it's pretty gloopy and gross, but it should hold. Just gonna splash a coat of paint on that and get her installed. Okay, so there it is installed. I've got the master cylinder push rod poking in through the firewall. Unfortunately, I don't have the pedal box installed yet. It's over there. I've still been doing some work on the firewall. Obviously, as you can see, I trimmed that down and welded it in. Welded in a piece to kind of smooth out that firewall so that I have a good mount for the master cylinder. But if I push on the push rod hard enough, you get a little bit of movement out of the slave cylinder and a little bit of movement on that clutch fork. So when I put the pedal box back in, I should have a working clutch. So yeah, one more thing ticked off the list, and one more step to driving this thing. So if you don't know, if you haven't been following along, most of the parts for this guy, as far as the donor vehicle, is from an 87 S10 Blazer, so that includes all the clutch linkage and the pedal box. So that's what I've been using to modify, or what I've been modifying to use in this guy. Most of that stuff was never designed to work on that, but it is a complete system, so it saves me from spending a few $100 on some fancy aftermarket Wilwood setup. But that's where I'm going to stop it today. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.